We are 3 hours from the 2019 Juno Awards in London, Ontario. And now, we're gonna let you in on a little secret. Some of the biggest musicians in the world are from London or have a connection to the city.
Because you're mine,
Johnny Cash,
I walk the line.
Guy Lombardo,
Happy New Year, everybody.
American woman.
superstar producer Jack Richardson,
Everything revolved around Jack. Most of the planet did, actually.
The Band,
Take a load off them.
and Justin Bieber. Over the next hour, you'll see the impact London's had on the Canadian and international music scene, and why this year's Juno Awards belong here.
I know that it's a creative place.
London is a vibrant area. It's not a small town.
I honestly think the Junos are coming home, and a lot of people will find out soon enough.
With Western University, Fanshawe College, and Beale Secondary School, London attracts the brightest young musicians, and through education, promotes and shapes their growth. One Western grad who's catching a ton of attention these days is Juno, Grammy, and Academy Award-nominated artist Stephen Macchio. He wrote the 2010 Olympic theme, I Believe, and has worked with Avril Lavigne, David Foster, and Alessia Cara. He also co-wrote monster hits for Miley Cyrus and The Weeknd, nabbing him an Oscar nomination. But the first big co-write that kicked Macchio's career into overdrive was Celine Dion's A New Day Has Come. And it all started when Macchio met Dion while studying at Western.
Celine came to perform at Alumni Hall, and this was right when she was experiencing the success with Beauty and the Beast. And of course, in my confident way, I said, sit in. Je vais t'écrire une chanson one day. So one day I'm going to write you a hit song. And she's like, okay, whatever. And almost 10 years later, I write her comeback song. All that started from that chance meeting her in London at UWO. When I wrote A New Day, I had this kind of riff. I said, I'm going to try to keep at least the bulk of this song on 4 chords. But the song kind of just flowed. I mean, you know, here we are on these chords. Hush now. That's why I went to a fancy chord for the first time. The story between Celine and I is what fairy tales are made of. You can't make this stuff up. You can't. I chose to study at Western for a plethora of reasons. At the time, I was looking at incredible schools, even outside of the country, at like Juilliard, Berklee College of Music in Boston. I felt that London would be the right place for me to sort of hide for the next 3 to 5 years, and gave me just the quietness that I needed to just kind of hone in on my craft.
Countless other world-class musicians flooded the halls of Western with their voices and music, including soprano Adrian Pizanka, who won a Juno Award in 2010.
Okay, we'll do Tosca. A performance is a performance, and I don't go, well, I'll bring my A game to Vienna and my C game to London. You feel excited to be in these grand opera houses, and yet, you know, you can make music in a humble place, even if it's in the living room. I'll be just as nervous. It's so bizarre, but it's true. Don't put it on tape, that maybe.
Well, that's a good story.
yeah, maybe. No, it's true, yeah. When I went to Western, usually classes would often be sort of, let's say, music history class or a theory of music. There were small rooms after room with a little kind of window that you could look into, and you heard the pianist playing, a singer singing, flute, double bass. So you'd hear this cacophony of sounds.
I practiced so much piano, and it was just an incredibly rich time where I spent 10, sometimes 15 hours a day on the piano. I understand how magical and also formative that block of period of time was in my life as an artist, as a composer, and more importantly, probably as a performer, because as I said, you know, there was such isolation for me in London, and I felt that in a really great way.
While at Western, I was already given wonderful performing opportunities, and again, it really just started that kernel of excitement for performing.
Western is definitely not the only game in town. Fanshawe is another huge reason London is a music city and hosting the Junos. London native and Juno winner Dan Broadbeck is the coordinator of Fanshawe's Music Industry Arts program.
I honestly think the Junos are coming home. When you look at all the people that have either called this a temporary home for a couple of years because of this program, so many Juno winners and nominees have come through the MIA program.
Including singer-songwriter M. Greiner, who has 20 albums under her belt, 3 Juno nominations, and even toured the world with David Bowie.
This is M.
If you haven't heard about her yet, don't worry, you will. At that point in my life, I had just started to write songs. So I guess everything was fueled by the love for songwriting. And I had never heard of a course like that where you could get a diploma in record production. It was almost like too good to be true. So you could either study engineering or production at the time when I took it. So I took production, and Jack Richardson was my teacher.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Richardson.
Richardson is best known for producing the Guess Who's biggest hits.
These eyes, does you do it to me?
Which led musicians like Kim Mitchell, Alice Cooper, and Bob Seger to come calling.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Guess Who! So he let us kind of be the Beatles in our own mind, and he was our George Martin. And we went out and tried to create this magic.
He kept the train on the tracks for 14 albums, and I think we owe him a great debt of gratitude.
Amazingly, having reached the pinnacle of success, Richardson settled in London to share his wisdom with thousands of young students at Fanshawe. His influence reverberates in the Canadian music industry to this day, so much so that the Producer of the Year Juno is named after him.
Jack came to London because of Fanshawe College for this Music Industry Arts program.
When I came up in the business, we didn't have anything like this, and it's just an opportunity to sort of guide them through some of the pitfalls that are going to occur in any kind of a career in this business.
His influence on some of the biggest engineers and producers and artists and writers in this country were in here in London in this room. So many of the top people that are in the music industry in Canada right now were taught by Jack.
These eyes have seen a lot of them.
I just remember not being fearful of his classes, but almost, I think someone that accomplished doesn't hold back because he had made so many great records. And it was wonderful to go into the studio and see all his records up on the walls and just feel like you're around someone great, But he was also just such a lovable person. I think you'll probably hear that.
Working on a night move.
The most important attribute of a producer, aside from their ability to tell a good performance from a bad performance, is keeping the vibe in the studio positive and creative.
I read the news today, oh boy.
There are some, infamous producers that say when nothing else is working, just shout at them. But Jack wasn't one of those guys. He was a good guy, and he created a good vibe in the room.
We have people that run the Canadian music industry, right down to people that are engineers in film and television. All of those people at some point were taught by Jack. When you take a lot of people from all over the country and put them into one spot, you see what happens, and that's what happens here. You can't help but turn a city into a music city because of that.
All these budding musicians need somewhere to perform and record. London has many beautiful concert halls, bars, and churches where artists can play. You're going to see performances in some of London's best venues throughout this program, starting with Juno-winning band Whitehorse, covering Feist at an intimate studio called The Sugar Shack.
Into the night.
That's White Horse covering Feist's How Come You Never Go There at London Sugar Shack. We're less than 3 hours from the Juno Awards. Coming up, London's key role in the explosion of EDM.
We were like the freaks of the city doing our own thing, and we were on a mission.
And then, the band's connection to London, Ontario.
Garth was the oracle in that band.
In less than 3 hours, London, Ontario is hosting the 2019 Juno Awards.
I love you, Canada. Thank you so much.
Now you'll see why London is a musical powerhouse. You might think of London as a conservative town, but it has a vibrant history of non-conforming radicals. Lido Pimienta, Shad,
Get it? Got it? Good.
the Nihilist Spasm Band, also electronic music pioneers.
John Aquaviva!
I'm an iconoclast amongst icons.
London's own John Aquaviva and his musical partner Richie Houghton, aka Plastic Man, were pivotal players taking electronic music from basements to stadiums. In the early 90s, as techno was exploding, Aquaviva and Houghton founded Plus 8 Records and were soon DJing for millions. Their influence transcends their music as they revolutionize the industry with new technologies. These forward-thinking radicals changed the game, and it all started between Windsor and London.
I'm Richie Houghton.
And I'm John Aquaviva.
And you're watching Dance on MTV.
You know, London is a strange little place in the middle of nowhere. And those kind of places are really incredible creative incubators. And if you find like-minded people, especially like-minded people doing something a little bit different, those relationships become really strong and really tight, and you feel like you're on a mission together. And I think that's, you know, what happened with John and I. We were like the freaks of the city just doing our own thing, and we were on a mission.
We were proud to incorporate technology into music. We called our music techno. Technology wasn't a terrible thing for us, and we tried to find that balance of being artists and expressing ourselves with machines. And so we just kept trying to always move things forward and push the boundaries as we knew best.
The things I remember most about those early times with John are our recording sessions. There were so many things going on that opened my eyes by meeting John. Yeah, it really was the 909, the 303. We would just lose ourselves down there.
London being that sanctuary that I referred to, sometimes the analogy I use is the eye of the storm. I still travel a great deal. I'm still really involved, and I love what I do. I think that our world has never been bigger and stronger when we talk about the DJ world and culture and electronic music.
John Aquaviva and Richie Houghton, their names are just passed around as sort of legends. And I remember seeing Richie Houghton do his Plastic Man project at Coachella in 2010. Kind of feel like he stole the show a little bit.
John Aquaviva and Richie Houghton were pioneers of techno, but their massive influence extends beyond their own music. They co-founded and pioneered Final Scratch, allowing DJs to play digital files using analog records, and then went on to co-found Beatport, the iTunes of dance music, opening a global market for electronic musicians and DJs.
Beatport has definitely helped my career in the sense that I've been fortunate to have a few songs that have charted well on there. I think once you start charting well on Beatport, you sort of get the endorsement of DJs that you've looked up to, because they'll see it on the charts there.
We knew Beatport needed to happen as we knew Final Scratch needed to happen. You know, we knew that was going to be somehow a big part of the development of electronic music, a music that since day one we wanted to see, you know, explode.
But another musical group is now clamoring for attention. They're called the Nihilist Spasm Band.
I dreamt I was living in paradise, but awoke from my dream to discover I was still in London, Ontario.
London has a long history of boundary-pushing free thinkers.
Can you hear me?
And if you don't already know the Nihilist Spasm Band, You should.
The band just stated from a circle of friends which customarily gathered at the Colonel's studio where the door always seemed to be open.
They called themselves the Rolling Stones of noise bands. Stop for a moment trying to figure out what that means.
The band first performed at Port Stanley in July 1965 playing kazoos.
They're a part of London. They're a part of London that existed before I arrived there.
First, there was the matter of temperament. Then there was the question of musical training, of which the band possessed practically none.
We cannot judge ourselves by what happens out there. We can only judge ourselves by ourselves. And if we decided we played great, we were great.
The idea was to make your own thing. You could be in tune to yourself, but you didn't have to be in tune with anybody else.
This led to the abandonment of pitch, tone, meter, and rhythm, to say nothing of notes, scales, melody, and harmony. From the... You're not videoing this, are you?
No.
Oh, good.
Formed back in 1965, the Nihilist Spasm Band played every Monday night for the next 50 years.
The Nihilist Spasm Band were around for 30 years plus, and nobody told me.
They created their own instruments and never played the same thing twice. The band has toured the world.
They were like legend in Japan.
Nihilist Spasm Band の皆さんですよ。
With legends like Sonic Youth and Pussy Riot. How did this group of rebellious artists originate in London?
The Nihilist Spasm Band was a reaction to London back in the 1960s, because London was a very conservative place, and also it was a place where people didn't bother you very much, and you could pretty much do what you wanted in the area of art.
It was a really hot ticket to go and hear the Nihilist Spasm Band. Of course, it was unlistenable, but that was the point, right?
On any given night, we were the best band in the world. Other nights, we were crap.
Disgust, I think, would be another word that was used sometimes.
They were inspirational to a lot of people, I think, just because they were cutting this individualistic path through the world.
We always did it our own way. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why our own band worked, because everybody just followed his own personality, and indeed, that was doing things our way, and that was the original do-it-yourself movement.
すいません。
Three members of the Nihilist Spasm Band attended London's Beale Secondary School.
Greg had gone to Beale, Murray had gone to Beale. There was a whole bunch of us. The thing was, at Beale, it was the attitude of the teachers. They basically understood that you could teach technique, but you couldn't teach creativity. So we were just exposed to stuff, all kinds of arguments, books you should read. They sort of created an attitude, and the people who actually were creative thrived on this.
One of the biggest things that I learned at Beale was that I carry a lot of power as an artist.
Being a Beale student became almost a cult in itself. You know, somebody mentioned they went to Beale, fine, you know, they're all right.
It really helped me understand, like, no, your art is really good. You will be able to live off of your career. You just have to keep going with your art, and here I am.
Immigrating from Colombia, Pimienta first found refuge from racism and the cold Canadian winters in the Beale Art Studios in London, Ontario.
I just needed to find my people. Where are the artists? Where are the musicians?
The multidisciplinary artist has released 2 albums.
There's no doubt in my mind that I will be successful.
And won the 2017 Polaris Music Prize.
Little Pimienta la Pabeza!
I hope that the Aryan specimen who told me to go back to my country 2 weeks after arriving in London, Ontario, Canada, is watching this.
She's on a whole other plane. She's on a whole other plane, and I am so grateful to live in a world where Little Pimienta does what she does.
I was able to really spread my wings and experiment and figure out how I was going to use that power once I was out, you know, in the world and aspects of my life. It really helped me understand that, you know, when you do things with discipline and love, and when you really focus your energy into what you're doing, great things can come about that. When I was at Beale, I just belonged there, and I was like a star there, and that's what Beale was for me. So yeah, I'll forever be thankful. I don't know what my life in Canada would have been or would have ended up. Maybe I would have ended up working at a bank.
All these boundary-pushing artists need a stage to perform their music. One of the most iconic venues in London is called The Office, formerly the York Hotel. Radiohead, the Tragically Hip, and Blue Rodeo have all played here. It's also where the Nihilist Spasm Band played their first gigs. Here is Juno-nominated artist Ria Mae covering Avril Lavigne's song Fall to Pieces at Call the Office.
To say things that you can't undo. If I had my way, I'd never get over. Today's the day. I pray that we make it through the fall, make it through it all. And I don't wanna fall to pieces. I just wanna sit and stare at you. I don't wanna talk about it, and I don't want a conversation. I just wanna cry in front of you. I don't wanna talk about it, 'cause I'm in love with you. Wanna know who you are, wanna know where to start. I wanna know what this means. Wanna know how you feel, wanna know what is real. I wanna know everything, and I don't wanna fall to pieces. I just wanna sit and stare at you. I don't wanna talk about it, and I don't want a conversation. I just wanna cry in front of you. I don't wanna talk about it, I don't wanna fall to pieces. I just wanna sit and stare at you. I don't wanna talk about it, I don't want a conversation. I just wanna cry in front of you. I don't wanna talk about it, 'cause I'm in love with you. I'm in love with you.
That's Ria Mae covering Avril Lavigne's Fall to Pieces from her album Under My Skin. The song was recorded at legendary London bar Call the Office as we count down to the Juno Awards tonight. Up next.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
Probably the most amazing showbiz moment right here in London, Ontario, was Johnny Cash proposing to June Carter.
And then?
The band became the band really when they convinced Garth's parents to let Garth come play, because Garth didn't think he could leave London.
In less than 2.5 hours, London, Ontario is hosting the 2019 Juno Awards.
I want to thank the Junos, of course. Make some noise.
Thank you guys. I love you. I love Canada.
This is incredible. Thank you so much.
Later, you'll see London's future as a music city. But first, why London is the creative hub of southwestern Ontario.
You're close to Toronto, Detroit, you're close to everything, but you could do your own story, you could do your own music. It was a very, very powerful nationalist cultural movement.
The legends who put London on the map. Tommy Hunter, Garth Hudson and the band,
Take a load off Annie.
Michelle Wright,
Take it like a man, steady and strong.
Justin Bieber, who was born in St. Joseph's Hospital right here in London, and the London musician with more records sold than Justin Bieber.
Mr. New Year's Eve himself, Guy Lombardo.
I rang many a New Year in, wonderfully and tragically, with Guy Lombardo in my ears.
In 1924, Guy Lombardo and his 3 brothers and some friends formed the Royal Canadians.
Well, we left London, Ontario, and went to Cleveland, and we had no jobs. We were getting real short of money.
Within 5 years, Lombardo played his first New Year's Eve broadcast on CBS, live from the Roosevelt Grill in New York.
Overnight it happened.
Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians.
Guy Lombardo played the New York City New Year's Eve party every year from 1929 until the year he died in 1977.
Happy New Year, everybody!
The band's recording of Auld Lang Syne is still the first song played in Times Square every New Year's Eve.
They have hit records. They sell 100 to 300 million. It's 300 million records, at least they sold. Guy Lombardo's success meant that if you were a young musician in London, Ontario and area, you had a great reason to continue in music because Guy Lombardo's doing it, so can we.
One of the hardworking kids from London who followed the path that Guy Lombardo paved was Tommy Hunter.
Tommy Hunter is as important to country music in Canada as anybody has ever been.
If you're new to the country, you may not know the impact that he had, but it was a huge impact.
Tommy Hunter is Canada's country gentleman, but before that, he was a kid from London, Ontario. Big turning point is when Tommy's about 9 years old, goes to the old London Arena and sees Roy Acuff. Goes crazy, wants to be in country music.
Tommy Hunter learned to play guitar playing churches, hospitals, and garden parties around London, and soon got paying gigs.
Tommy Hunter was a rhythm guitarist on a show on CBC. He started in 1960, and then 5 years later took over that time slot and had his own show.
The Tommy Hunter Show aired on CBC for the next 27 years, featuring artists like Johnny Cash, Gordon Lightfoot, and Anne Murray.
In the lexicon of country in the Grand Ole Opry is, of course, the mother church. But for a lot of people in this country, certainly of multiple generations, you wouldn't have known a lot of the bands that you'd been if it wasn't for Tommy Hunter and his show. He's a player for sure, but he's a presenter.
Talk about the good times. I had all my boyhood idols on the show. I was like a kid in a candy shop.
I mean, Garth Brooks went on there early. You know, we all know about Shania Twain when she was Eileen Twain.
When I die, I may not go to heaven.
He had great taste, and the producers had great taste. So I think this guy is the ultimate. I have a Tommy Hunter belt buckle on my piano downstairs.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
London also has an intimate connection to the man in black. Johnny Cash's manager was London native Saul Holliff, and London is where Johnny Cash and June Carter had a very special moment, as seen in the movie Walk the Line.
7,000 people, and he asked me to marry him in front of 7,000 people, but I would have liked it if he would have gotten down on his knees and proposed to me.
Probably the most amazing showbiz moment right here in London, Ontario, was Johnny Cash proposing to June Carter on stage at the old London Garden.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but I gotta ask June here a question before we finish this song.
What's that, John?
Will you marry me?
One of the theories is that he did so on stage because it was Saul Holliff's hometown. And it was a way of honoring Saul for his role through the 60s and continuing into the 1970s as his manager.
I walk the line.
Saul, I think, helped Johnny become a megastar. And I think that was really important that, you know, a lot of these country guys, again, were just playing in their communities and they were traveling around the country and they were just being them. And I think Saul kind of created a space where Johnny could learn to be the big man that he ended up becoming. I mean, Johnny has immense talent, and great managers don't make you a star if you don't have it. Johnny had it. Saul just figured out a way to go, that's the guy, and we can do something with him. And maybe 13 of Johnny's best years were with Saul.
As sure as night is.
Around this time, one of the most legendary rock groups ever was coming together. The band redefined Americana, blending folk, country, rock, R&B, gospel, and other influences. They went on to back Bob Dylan when he went electric. Released a game-changing debut album, and recorded arguably the best concert documentary, The Last Waltz, directed by Martin Scorsese. That all started when Ronnie Hawkins came up to Canada and spent a lot of time in and around London, Ontario.
They were the best band ever, and it's only because they were so tight, because they could actually think like one rather than five. Boy, and that takes years.
Of course, they go right back to London to the 1950s, when Ronnie Hawkins, who led the Hawks, who became the band, emerges from Arkansas with other musicians in tow, starts to add people like Robbie Robertson. Richard Manuel comes down from Stratford. Rick Danko comes in from Simcoe, not very far away from London. They're playing here a lot. They're drawing in great musicians. And then finally, in the early 60s, they add a wonderful organist, keyboard player, Garth Hudson, from right here in London, and that cements the classic lineup.
band became the band really when they convinced Garth's parents to let Garth come play, because Garth didn't think he could leave London and do this thing. Robbie was sitting here telling me about how they had to go to Garth and his parents and really show that Garth was talented and could be something. And I don't think the band is the band without Garth.
Garth was the only one that could play that nobody had ever heard before, but it fit right in. You wondered why it wasn't in there before. That was the touch he had, the gift.
Garth was the oracle in that band. Even though Robbie was the one who led the charge, it's that Garth wasn't saying, it's the stuff he was playing.
In 1989, the band was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame at the Juno Awards.
Well, let's hear it for the newest members of the Juno Awards Hall of Fame. The band!
Please welcome Michelle Wright.
Another award-winning artist with a special connection to London, Ontario is Michelle Wright.
Michelle Wright came from Merlin, near Chatham. She then comes to Fanshawe. She gets in a talent contest run by a local radio station. Well, Marie Bottrell, who was Canada's country queen at the time, points to Michelle Wright and says, "She is our winner. She's the one we want to pick. It's you."
And the winnings from that prize was money to be able to make my first album.
Okay, the Juno goes to
Michelle Wright.
Winning a Juno Award, absolutely the highlight of my career. I'm, you know, like any Canadian, dreaming the dream, and to someday be walking up on that stage and having one of those presented to you, it's the greatest.
I feel very privileged to be here tonight, and I thank you so much.
The Juno Awards are happening in just over 2 hours. In advance of the big show, we've been showcasing Juno-nominated artists performing in London's iconic halls. One of London's marquee venues is London Music Hall. Artists from Cat Power to Snoop Dogg and London's own Shad have played here. Here is Juno award-winning band The Dead South covering the Beaches' song Money at London Music Hall. the Dead South covering the Beaches song Money at London Music Hall. Coming up, meet London's Loud Luxury, who are nominated for Single of the Year at tonight's Juno Awards, happening in 2 hours. In just over 2 hours, London, Ontario is hosting the 2019 Juno Awards.
Thank you, Canada.
Thank you so much.
Earlier, you saw how London's schools, alternative thinkers, and its location in southwestern Ontario have made it a hotbed for music. And now we look to the future. London's Loud Luxury had one of the biggest jams of 2018.
Yeah, Body's given us this crazy, crazy moment, you know.
Yeah.
We're touring nonstop. We do almost, more shows in a month than there is days.
I think in September we did 33 shows or something.
Andrew and Joe met while going to Western, started DJing together and releasing hits. They're nominated for 4 Juno Awards this year.
The London music scene is super rich. A lot of the biggest guys have come here when they first started off, like DJ AM, Steve Aoki. We used to play at London Music Hall, we'd play at some of the Western shows, and all of these guys would come through and we'd get to play with them.
People want to listen to music. We get talent here that we don't even deserve.
London's rabid audience will ensure the music scene continues to flourish. Hometown hero Shad agrees.
Fresh off his Juno win last night, hip-hop artist Shad.
I usually feel like the crowd outworked me a little bit. It's a weird sensation, but the crowd is so warm. I want to exceed their expectations.
Get it? Got it? Good!
I've lived in Toronto for a long time. I've lived in Vancouver for a while, but this is my hometown, so this is where I want to kill it. I'm just excited for people to come here, and then just having that Juno experience. It's exciting for me because I have such a love for this place, having grown up here. I'm excited for people to have that experience here.
A Juno frenzy is exploding in London this week. And with artists like Shad and Loud Luxury releasing new music, the future is now for this city. Whether at Western or Fanshawe, or for the free thinkers, the DIY artists, for all budding musicians.
I think London is just going to expand as a music city. The people that I see working in London are so hardworking. And they are so celebrated when they come back to London, and there's support. It also has given birth to a real creative spirit here in London. You can make an album on your computer, you can make it at home, you can press it in London, you can gig in London, you can have a whole kind of career here, or at least could start here.
I'm really curious to see what happens there with youth culture.
Break these walls.
I think the future of London as a music town will always be something that's manifesting and changing over time. It's a hub now for music, and I don't ever see that ending. Someday, instead of talking about Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams, we'll be talking about the engineers and producers coming out of London, Ontario.
There is still that sound when you go downtown. You can hear that music wafting. You're walking down the street and there's music wafting out of a club or a pub or a coffee house. This rich cultural history still exists because of the university, because of the colleges, because of the people, because of the community. So I think no matter what's going on in London, they still can depend on that strong sense, that deep-rooted culture in that city, and that sense of community that nothing can spoil.
London has all the potential to be one of the biggest cities for arts and culture in Canada.
London, I love you. This feels so good. Thank you.
Fans in London are some of the most supportive in Canada. Rum Runners is an intimate venue tucked above the London Music Hall. Artists like Shad and Arkells have performed here for passionate audiences. Here is Juno-nominated artist Jive at Rum Runners, covering Remy Shan's Grammy and Juno-nominated song, Take a Message.
Sensibility and moving on. was right, but who knows what you did on the day you cried in the sleep. Oh, you cried in the sleep. Take a message from my love. 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 Take a message from my love.
Now you know some of London's amazing musical history and why the Junos are in London this year. Before the Juno Awards kick off in 2 hours, up next you'll see headlines, the biggest, best, and weirdest music stories of the past year. And then the Junos pre-show with Tom Power. Watch as Tom chats with Sarah McLachlan, Corey Hart, Alessia Cara, and more.
All that I say is that we're living life. Did you feel when you found that you paid the price? Hope it wasn't lost in an honest truth. So the past doesn't share all that we've been through. Every little thing that you did was right, but who knows what you did on the day